God says the waiting is over. This Saturday you meet your soulmate. It doesn't begin with excitement. It begins with a quiet certainty that settles into you before your mind can question it. The kind of certainty that doesn't rush your heartbeat, but steadies it. You may have felt it already today, a subtle sense that something long delayed is finally lining up, not because you chased it, but because the timing is no longer resisting you. This is not about coincidence. And it's not about fantasy. The waiting you endured wasn't passive. It shaped you. There were seasons when you wondered if the silence meant no, if the distance meant denial, if the delay meant you misunderstood everything you felt so deeply. You kept going anyway. You kept growing anyway. And that growth is the reason this moment can finally arrive without breaking you. For a long time, you were being prepared, not punished. You may remember nights when you questioned yourself. When you wondered why connections came close but never stayed. Why timing always felt just slightly off. Why your heart could recognize depth, but life refused to deliver it fully. What you didn't see then is that you were being protected from meeting this person too early. Too early, you would have mistaken intensity for alignment. Too early, you would have overgiven. Too early, you would have settled for less than what your soul actually requires. That version of you needed time. This Saturday doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives because the resistance is gone. Something has shifted internally on both sides. Not magically. Honestly. You've learned restraint. They've learned responsibility. You've learned how to stay rooted in yourself. They've learned how to show up without running. That alignment can't be forced. It can only arrive when both people are ready to meet without masks. You may notice that lately, your patience feels different. It's no longer heavy. It's no longer desperate. It feels complete, like it's done its job. That's not you giving up. That's you finishing a chapter internally before the next one begins externally. God doesn't rush souls into meetings they aren't prepared to sustain. This Saturday isn't about fireworks. It's about recognition. The kind that feels familiar without feeling old. The kind that doesn't spike anxiety or trigger fear. It feels calm. Grounded. Clear. You might feel a strange sense of peace when you think about it, even without details. No frantic questions. No racing scenarios. Just a knowing that you don't need to control how this unfolds for it to be meaningful. That peace is intentional. The waiting taught you discernment. It taught you how to listen to your body when something is off. It taught you how to pause instead of chasing. It taught you how to walk away from half-answers and emotional confusion. Without that, this meeting would have overwhelmed you. There were moments you thought the delay meant you were forgotten. But heaven doesn't forget. It refines. Every closed door redirected you away from lessons that would have cost you more than they gave. Every ending strengthened your ability to choose wisely instead of emotionally. Now, the choice ahead isn't heavy. It's honest. This Saturday, you don't meet someone who completes you. You meet someone who can stand beside you without diminishing either of you. That's why the waiting mattered. Completion is fragile. Partnership is stable. You may notice that your expectations feel quieter than they used to. You're not demanding perfection. You're not romanticizing potential. You're open, but not empty. Curious, but not needy. That balance is new. This meeting doesn't arrive to rescue you from loneliness. It arrives because you learned how to be whole without companionship defining your worth. Wholeness attracts wholeness. That's not a saying. It's a pattern. You didn't miss your moment. You matured into it. There were times you thought letting go meant losing something important. In reality, letting go cleared the space necessary for truth to arrive. What is meant for you doesn't require you to abandon yourself to receive it. That's the lesson you mastered. This Saturday doesn't demand performance. You don't need to impress. You don't need to prove your value. You don't need to relive old stories. You show up as you are now, not as who you were when you were still healing. That's the difference. The person you meet doesn't come with chaos. They come with presence. They don't rush you. They don't confuse you. They don't leave you guessing where you stand. You recognize them not by intensity, but by ease. Ease is how alignment feels in the body. You may feel a quiet sense of relief when you speak, like you don't have to translate yourself. Like your words land without explanation. That relief is rare because it requires mutual emotional literacy. That literacy didn't exist before. Not in you. Not in them. This meeting isn't a reward. It's a result. A result of patience. Of boundaries. Of self-respect. Of choosing growth over attachment. God didn't delay this to test your faith. The delay was the process that made this meeting safe. You're not walking into something unknown. You're walking into something prepared. Prepared by lessons you survived. Prepared by endings that hurt but taught. Prepared by solitude that strengthened you instead of hardening you. This Saturday isn't about fate colliding dramatically. It's about alignment finally becoming visible. You don't need to rush the moment. You don't need to define it. Let it arrive as it is. Let recognition happen naturally. Let connection reveal itself through consistency, not promises. This is not the beginning of a fairy tale. It's the beginning of something real. And real doesn't need urgency to feel powerful. As you move toward this Saturday, stay grounded. Stay honest. Stay present. You're not being asked to give more than you have. You're being asked to meet someone from the version of yourself that knows who they are. The waiting is over because the preparation is complete. And this time, you're ready to meet them without losing yourself. That's why this moment is finally here. It doesn't feel like anticipation anymore. It feels like arrival happening slowly, internally, before anything external confirms it. You may notice that the way you think about this Saturday has changed. There's no racing heart, no dramatic buildup. Instead, there's a calm awareness, as if your system already knows it's safe to be here now. This part of the story begins in that calm. For so long, waiting felt like effort. Like holding your breath. Like convincing yourself to be patient while secretly wondering if patience was just another name for being forgotten. But something has shifted. The waiting no longer feels heavy because it's no longer unfinished. It's complete. It did what it was meant to do. You're not standing at the edge of hope anymore. You're standing on solid ground. There was a season when you would have approached this moment with fear disguised as excitement. You would have asked yourself what this could become, what it could turn into, what it could take from you if it went wrong. That fear came from history, not intuition. It came from moments where you gave your heart before your foundation was strong. That version of you doesn't lead anymore. Now, as this Saturday draws closer, you're not projecting your past onto the future. You're allowing the future to meet you as you are now. That restraint is not indifference. It's wisdom. God doesn't remove waiting until impatience is gone. He removes it when fear no longer controls the outcome. You may realize that you're not trying to impress anyone anymore, not even in your imagination. You're not rehearsing who you should be or how you should act. You're not negotiating your personality to be chosen. That tells you everything about how much you've grown. The meeting ahead doesn't require performance. It requires presence. You might reflect on how many times before you met potential too early. How often you recognized something meaningful before the other person had the capacity to hold it. Timing hurt you more than rejection ever did. But timing also taught you discernment. Discernment is what keeps this moment grounded instead of overwhelming. This Saturday isn't placed in your life to sweep you off your feet. It's placed to show you what connection feels like when it's mutual, steady, and respectful. You don't lose your footing here. You gain clarity. You may feel a sense of familiarity when you imagine the encounter, not because you've lived it before, but because your body recognizes safety. Safety doesn't feel thrilling at first. It feels calm. Calm is often mistaken for boredom by those who are used to chaos. You're not used to chaos anymore. The waiting stripped that addiction away. You may notice that you're no longer attached to how fast things move. Speed doesn't impress you. Consistency does. Presence does. How someone listens matters more than what they promise. That shift didn't come easily. It came from disappointment that forced you to raise your standards instead of lowering your expectations. God didn't delay this meeting to make you lonely. He delayed it to make you discerning. As this Saturday approaches, you may feel moments of gratitude for the solitude you once resented. Solitude taught you how to hear yourself clearly. It taught you how to build a life that doesn't pause when no one is beside you. That life is what makes partnership possible now. You're not looking for someone to fill a gap. You're open to someone who fits into a life that already exists. That difference is everything. This meeting doesn't come with confusion. There's no mixed energy. No emotional whiplash. No guessing games. You're not wondering where you stand. You're not searching for reassurance between the lines. Clarity doesn't always arrive as answers. Sometimes it arrives as the absence of anxiety. You may feel that absence now. Earlier, you would have mistaken intensity for divine confirmation. You've learned that God doesn't speak through chaos. He speaks through peace that doesn't need to be defended. This Saturday carries peace. It doesn't demand immediate decisions. It doesn't rush vulnerability. It doesn't ask you to reveal more than you're ready to share. There's a mutual pacing that feels natural, not negotiated. That pacing tells you you're not ahead or behind. You're aligned. You may notice that your prayers have changed recently. You're no longer asking when. You're asking for wisdom. For clarity. For discernment. That shift in prayer preceded this shift in timing. God answers the prayers that align you, not the ones that rush you. This meeting is not a test of your faith. It's evidence of refinement. You didn't lose hope. You learned how to hold it without letting it consume you. You might feel a quiet confidence as you move closer to this day. Not confidence in the outcome, but confidence in yourself. You know you can walk away if something doesn't feel right. You know you can stay present without overcommitting. That confidence protects connection instead of sabotaging it. This Saturday doesn't mark the end of your independence. It honors it. You don't abandon your rhythm to make space for someone else. You invite them into it carefully, consciously. That invitation feels sacred because it's intentional. You may sense that this meeting doesn't need to be dramatic to be meaningful. There's no pressure for instant chemistry or lifelong declarations. What matters is how it feels to be yourself in the moment without shrinking or overextending. That ease is the confirmation you use to look for in signs. God doesn't always announce His timing with miracles. Sometimes He announces it with stability. You've learned how to recognize that. As this part of the story unfolds, let yourself stay where you are. Don't jump ahead. Don't rewrite the moment before it arrives. You're not being tested on how well you anticipate. You're being invited to receive. Receive without fear. Receive without urgency. Receive without abandoning yourself. The waiting is over not because everything is about to happen at once, but because nothing inside you is resisting anymore. And that's how you'll know this meeting is different. Not because it overwhelms you, but because it feels right to stand exactly where you are when it happens. It doesn't feel like a countdown anymore. There's no sense of days ticking loudly toward something you're trying to brace for. Instead, time feels cooperative, like it's moving with you instead of against you. You may notice that you're less focused on the calendar and more aware of your internal state, and that shift tells you something important has already changed. This part of the story begins in that awareness. You're not preparing yourself emotionally the way you used to. There's no mental checklist of what to say or how to act. You're not imagining every possible version of the encounter. That habit once came from wanting control, from fearing disappointment. Now, it feels unnecessary. You trust yourself to respond honestly in real time. That trust didn't come easily. It was earned. There were seasons when you tried to be ready before you actually were. You wanted connection, but you weren't yet anchored. You wanted depth, but you hadn't learned how to protect your peace. Back then, readiness was something you tried to force. Now, it's something you recognize quietly. God doesn't bring people together when they're eager. He brings them together when they're steady. As this Saturday draws closer, you may feel a strange sense of neutrality, and that might confuse you at first. You expected excitement or nervousness, not this calm middle ground. But neutrality isn't lack of feeling. It's emotional balance. It's your nervous system recognizing safety instead of threat. Safety used to feel unfamiliar to you. You were conditioned to expect turbulence, mixed signals, emotional highs followed by confusion. Calm once felt suspicious. Now, calm feels right. That's not an accident. You might notice that your thoughts about love itself have changed. You're no longer imagining it as something that rescues you from loneliness or fixes what's missing. You see it as something that adds, something that complements, something that grows alongside you rather than consuming you. That perspective changes who you attract. This meeting isn't happening to complete a broken chapter. It's happening because you closed that chapter yourself. You stopped rereading old pain. You stopped asking why things didn't work. You stopped waiting for closure from people who couldn't give it. That self-closure made space for something new. You may reflect on how often you used to mistake longing for readiness. Longing is powerful, but it doesn't always mean timing is right. Timing requires alignment on both sides, not just desire. This Saturday isn't fueled by longing. It's fueled by alignment. You're not walking into this hoping to be chosen. You're walking into it knowing you can choose as well. That equality shifts the entire dynamic. You're no longer auditioning for a place in someone's life. You're assessing whether there's room for mutual respect and shared direction. That mindset didn't exist before. You might feel a subtle gratitude for the delays that once frustrated you. For the connections that almost worked but didn't. For the moments that felt like rejection but were actually redirection. Without those, you might have settled for something that looked like love but felt like constant effort. God doesn't delay out of cruelty. He delays out of precision. As this moment approaches, you may notice that your expectations feel grounded rather than inflated. You're not demanding perfection. You're not searching for signs that this is the one. You're open, attentive, and present. Presence reveals more than signs ever could. This meeting doesn't come with a script. It doesn't follow a pattern you've seen before. That unfamiliarity is intentional. It prevents you from slipping into old roles. You're not the fixer. You're not the overgiver. You're not the one trying to hold everything together. You're simply yourself. You may notice how much energy that saves you. There's also a quiet dignity in how you're approaching this now. You're not advertising your hopes or fears, even to yourself. You're letting the moment unfold without narrating it in advance. That restraint keeps you grounded. Earlier, you would have rushed to define what this means. Now, you're content to experience it first. Experience before interpretation. Truth before conclusion. That order matters. You may sense that your emotional boundaries feel solid but not rigid. You're open to connection without being porous. You can listen without absorbing. You can engage without overextending. That balance is what makes this meeting safe. This Saturday doesn't require you to abandon your life to make space for someone new. It fits into your life instead of disrupting it. That fit is subtle, but powerful. You're not rearranging yourself to be seen. You might also notice that your prayers have shifted again. You're no longer asking God to bring someone. You're asking Him to help you stay discerning. To keep you honest. To help you recognize alignment without fear. Those prayers are being answered now. This meeting doesn't arrive with confusion. There's no emotional guessing game. No mixed energy. No wondering where you stand. You don't feel the urge to read between the lines. When something is aligned, it doesn't require decoding. You may feel a quiet sense of mutual curiosity rather than pressure. Curiosity allows discovery without expectation. It allows you to learn who someone is now, not who you hoped they would become. That shift protects you from projection. God isn't bringing you someone to fix or be fixed by. He's bringing you someone capable of standing beside you, not leaning on you or pulling away. That's why this feels different. You're not being swept into something. You're stepping into it consciously. With your eyes open. With your feet planted. With your sense of self intact. That's readiness. You may notice that you're less concerned with where this leads and more attentive to how it feels to be present in it. That focus keeps you from rushing intimacy. It allows trust to build naturally, without force. Trust built slowly lasts longer. This Saturday doesn't come to replace your solitude. It honors it. It acknowledges the strength you built alone and invites someone to witness it, not take it away. You're not trading independence for connection. You're integrating the two. That integration is rare. As this part of the story unfolds, remember that you don't need to impress God with your patience or prove your faith through suffering. The waiting ended because the lesson completed itself. You learned how to wait without losing yourself. You learned how to hope without clinging. You learned how to stand alone without hardening. Those lessons prepared you for this moment more than any sign ever could. This meeting isn't the reward. It's the continuation. A continuation of growth. Of honesty. Of alignment. Stay present as this Saturday approaches. Don't rush your heart. Don't mute your intuition. Don't hand over your peace in exchange for potential. You don't need to force anything now. The waiting is over because you're no longer waiting to become someone else. You're ready to meet them as who you are. It arrives not as excitement, but as steadiness settling deeper into your body, the kind that makes you realize you're no longer bracing for disappointment. You're not scanning the horizon for proof. You're not rehearsing emotional defenses. You're simply awake inside the moment, aware that something meaningful is approaching without needing to dramatize it. This part of the story lives in that steadiness. You may notice that your inner world feels quieter now, but not empty. It's organized. Thoughts don't collide the way they used to. Emotions don't compete for attention. There's an internal order that wasn't there before, and it didn't come from control. It came from acceptance. Acceptance of what you can't rush. Acceptance of what you no longer need to fear. Acceptance of who you've become through the waiting. Earlier, your heart would have raced at the idea of meeting someone significant. It would have filled the silence with questions, expectations, and imagined futures. Now, your heart feels measured. Not closed. Measured. It knows it doesn't need to sprint toward meaning to recognize it. That changes everything. You might feel moments where the thought of Saturday passes through your mind without attaching itself. It doesn't hijack your mood or derail your focus. It simply exists as part of your awareness, like a landmark you'll reach when you get there. That lack of urgency isn't indifference. It's readiness. There was a time when waiting felt like being suspended. Like your life was on hold until something or someone arrived. That illusion has dissolved. Your life didn't pause while you waited. It expanded. You learned how to stand in your days without leaning emotionally on what hadn't arrived yet. That expansion is why this meeting won't shrink you. This stage isn't about anticipation. It's about embodiment. You're living from the version of yourself who knows their rhythm, their limits, their values. You're not outsourcing your sense of direction to this moment. That makes the moment safer. You may notice how differently you speak to yourself now. There's less pressure. Less inner commentary. You're not coaching yourself through emotions. You trust them to move naturally. That trust didn't exist before. It was built through moments when you had to choose yourself without applause. You might reflect on how often you once interpreted delays as rejection. How quickly you assumed something was wrong with you. That narrative no longer fits. You can see now that the delay wasn't about unworthiness. It was about timing that needed alignment on both sides. God doesn't delay what's ready. He prepares what isn't. As Saturday approaches, you may feel a quiet sense of dignity about how you're showing up. You're not chasing confirmation. You're not demanding certainty. You're not negotiating your boundaries to be chosen. You're allowing connection to meet you where you are. That dignity changes how everything unfolds. You may also notice that your emotional energy feels conserved. You're not pouring it into speculation or fantasy. That energy is staying with you, supporting your clarity instead of fueling anxiety. Clarity thrives on conservation. This part of the story isn't about imagining the encounter. It's about noticing how you feel before it happens. Calm. Grounded. Present. Those feelings are the real confirmation. Earlier, you might have looked for signs outside yourself. Numbers. Coincidences. Reassurance from others. Now, the sign is internal. It's the absence of chaos. God often confirms His timing by removing confusion, not by adding excitement. You may sense that you're no longer afraid of disappointment the way you once were. Not because you expect everything to go perfectly, but because disappointment no longer threatens your identity. You know who you are regardless of outcome. That knowledge gives you emotional independence. This meeting doesn't arrive to rescue you from loneliness. It arrives because loneliness no longer controls you. You learned how to be alone without becoming isolated. You learned how to want connection without needing it to validate your worth. Wholeness attracts wholeness. You might notice that your expectations are realistic, but open. You're not projecting an ideal onto this person. You're curious about who they are now, not who you hope they'll become. Curiosity invites truth. Expectation invites performance. You've chosen truth. This Saturday doesn't come with emotional fireworks. It comes with coherence. Coherence between how you feel, how you act, and what you value. That coherence is rare because it requires self-honesty. Self-honesty is what made this timing possible. You may feel moments of gratitude for the solitude that once felt heavy. That solitude strengthened you. It clarified your standards. It taught you how to listen inwardly instead of constantly reaching outward. Without that, this meeting would have arrived too soon. You're not meeting someone to fix a wound. You're meeting someone after the wound taught you discernment. That distinction matters more than romance ever could. This stage of the journey doesn't ask you to prepare a version of yourself. It invites you to arrive as you are. No armor. No performance. No emotional bargaining. That invitation feels safe because you trust yourself. You may also notice that you're less concerned with labels. You don't need to define what this is immediately. You're comfortable letting connection reveal itself through consistency, not promises. Consistency reveals character. You're not rushing intimacy. You're allowing familiarity to develop naturally. That patience protects both of you from illusion. God doesn't build lasting connection through speed. He builds it through alignment. This meeting isn't meant to overwhelm you. It's meant to fit into your life without disruption. That fit feels subtle, but it's powerful. It doesn't require sacrifice of self. It requires presence. Presence is the offering now. As this part of the story unfolds, you may feel an unexpected peace about not knowing everything yet. That peace is new. Before, not knowing felt unsafe. Now, it feels spacious. Spaciousness allows growth without pressure. You're not waiting for Saturday to define your future. You're allowing it to inform your present. That difference keeps you grounded. This stage doesn't conclude with certainty. It concludes with trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in timing. Trust that what's meant to unfold will do so without forcing. You're not standing at the edge of something fragile. You're standing in the middle of your life, stable, aware, and ready to meet what arrives without losing yourself. And that's why this moment feels different. Not because it promises everything, but because you no longer need promises to stay present. It carries a different texture now, not anticipation, not excitement, but a quiet awareness that you are no longer standing on the edge of something unknown. You are already inside the moment, even before Saturday arrives. You may notice this in the smallest ways, how your breath stays steady when the thought crosses your mind, how your body doesn't tense the way it once did. That change didn't happen by accident. It happened because something inside you finally settled. This part of the story is about that settling. For so long, you lived with the feeling that something meaningful was always just out of reach. Close enough to sense, far enough to doubt. You tried to be patient. You tried to stay hopeful. And when those didn't work, you tried to stay strong. What you didn't realize is that strength wasn't what was being asked of you. Surrender was. Not surrender to loneliness. Not surrender to disappointment. Surrender to timing you couldn't control. You may remember how heavy waiting used to feel. How it followed you even into good days. How it whispered questions late at night. Was I overlooked? Did I miss something? Am I asking for too much? Those questions shaped you, but they no longer define you. You answered them through growth, not explanations. Now, as Saturday approaches, those questions don't show up anymore. Or if they do, they pass without sticking. That's not avoidance. That's resolution. Resolution doesn't always come from answers. Sometimes it comes from becoming someone who no longer needs them. This stage isn't about preparing your heart. Your heart is already prepared. It's about recognizing how much trust you've built within yourself. Trust that you can meet someone without losing your balance. Trust that you can open without overextending. Trust that you can walk away if something doesn't align without feeling like you failed. That trust is new. And it's powerful. You might notice that you're no longer attaching fantasy to this meeting. You're not imagining how the story will unfold, how it will be told later, how it will look from the outside. You're focused on how it feels from the inside. That shift protects you from illusion. God doesn't bring people together through fantasy. He brings them together through readiness. This Saturday doesn't arrive to fill a void. It arrives because the void closed on its own. You learned how to live fully without waiting for someone else to validate your life. That independence didn't make you colder. It made you clearer. Clearer about what you deserve. Clearer about what you won't repeat. Clearer about the kind of love that feels safe in your body. You may sense a quiet confidence growing, not loud, not performative. A confidence rooted in self-knowledge. You know your patterns now. You know what pulls you off center and what keeps you grounded. That awareness is what makes this moment feel calm instead of overwhelming. Earlier, calm would have scared you. You would have wondered if something was missing. Now, calm feels like confirmation. This part of the journey also invites reflection on how you relate to God differently now. Your prayers are less urgent, less pleading. They sound more like conversations. More like trust. You're not asking him to prove himself. You're listening. Listening changes everything. God doesn't shout timing into your life. He aligns it with who you've become. You may notice that you're not trying to control what this meeting becomes. You're not labeling it before it begins. You're allowing space for reality to reveal itself through consistency and presence. That patience isn't passive. It's discerning. Discernment doesn't rush intimacy. It observes it. You've learned that depth isn't proven in a single moment. It's revealed over time, through how someone shows up when there's nothing to gain. That understanding keeps you grounded now. This meeting doesn't come to disrupt your life. It comes to fit into it. You don't rearrange yourself to make space. You invite someone into the rhythm you've already built. That rhythm was forged in solitude. There were seasons you didn't understand. Seasons where nothing seemed to move. Where you felt forgotten. But those seasons taught you something crucial. How to stay rooted when nothing external confirms your faith. That lesson is what makes this moment safe. You're not meeting someone as a wounded version of yourself hoping to be healed. You're meeting them as someone who healed enough to recognize alignment when it appears. Alignment doesn't feel dramatic. It feels natural. You might notice that your emotional reactions are proportionate now. You're not overly guarded, but you're not wide open either. You're responsive. That balance allows honesty without pressure. Pressure once made you perform. Presence allows you to be. This part of the story isn't asking you to believe everything will be perfect. It's asking you to trust that whatever unfolds, you'll remain connected to yourself. That trust removes fear from the equation. Fear used to drive your choices. Now, clarity does. You may feel moments of gratitude surface unexpectedly. Gratitude for lessons that hurt but taught. Gratitude for endings that saved you from settling. Gratitude for time that refined you instead of breaking you. Those moments weren't wasted. This Saturday doesn't arrive as a reward. It arrives as a result. A result of patience. Of boundaries. Of learning when to let go and when to stay still. God didn't rush this because rushing would have cost you peace. You're not being asked to give more than you have. You're being asked to show up as you are, without fear of losing yourself. That's why this feels different from every other time you hoped something would work. This time, you're not hoping from emptiness. You're meeting from wholeness. As this part of the journey settles in you, notice how little effort it takes to stay calm. That calm is the clearest sign you could receive. Not excitement. Not intensity. Calm. Calm means you're ready. You're not standing on the edge of something fragile. You're standing in the middle of your life, grounded, aware, and open. And when Saturday arrives, you won't step into it as someone waiting to be chosen. You'll step into it as someone who already knows who they are. That's why the waiting truly ended. It begins with a strange sense of normalcy that feels almost sacred, like realizing that something important doesn't need to announce itself to be real. You wake up and move through the day without a spike of emotion, without that old familiar tightness in your chest. Instead, there's a quiet steadiness, a feeling that you're not being pulled toward the moment anymore because you've already arrived internally. This part of the story lives inside that calm. You may notice that you're not checking your thoughts the way you used to. You're not asking yourself how you should feel or whether you're feeling enough. That inner monitoring once kept you alert, but it also kept you restless. Now, there's trust. Trust that whatever you feel will be honest. Trust that you don't need to force emotion to make something meaningful. For a long time, waiting trained you to stay alert for disappointment. Even when things looked hopeful, a part of you stayed guarded, bracing for the familiar letdown. That guard doesn't feel necessary anymore. Not because you believe nothing can go wrong, but because you know you'll be okay even if something does. That knowing is new. This stage isn't about confidence in the outcome. It's about confidence in yourself. You've learned how to stay grounded when emotions rise. You've learned how to pause instead of rushing. You've learned how to listen to discomfort without letting it control you. Those lessons didn't come from ease. They came from repetition. From moments where you had to sit with uncertainty without numbing it away. From nights where you chose self-respect over attachment even when it hurt. You carry that wisdom now, quietly. As Saturday draws closer, you might notice that your imagination isn't running ahead of you. You're not playing scenes in your head or scripting conversations. That silence isn't emptiness. It's presence. You're available to experience the moment as it is instead of pre-living it. Presence keeps you honest. Earlier, you might have mistaken this lack of anticipation for detachment. Now you recognize it as regulation. Your nervous system isn't activated because it doesn't feel threatened. It recognizes this moment as something you can handle without losing balance. That recognition didn't exist before. You may also notice how differently you relate to hope now. Hope used to feel fragile, like something that could shatter if you held it too tightly. Now it feels spacious. It doesn't need protection. It can exist without dominating your thoughts. That's the difference between hope born from longing and hope born from trust. This part of the journey also brings a deeper awareness of how you value your time and energy. You're no longer willing to pour them into uncertainty without reciprocity. Not because you've become rigid, but because you've become intentional. Intentional people don't rush connection. They allow it to prove itself. You might reflect on how often in the past you confused effort with love. How you believed that if something required constant work, it must be important. That belief kept you in situations that drained you. Now, ease has become your reference point. Ease doesn't mean lack of depth. Ease means alignment. This Saturday isn't about effort. It's about resonance. About how naturally conversation flows. About how silence feels shared instead of awkward. About how you don't feel the need to edit yourself to be understood. Those signals matter more than promises. You may notice that you're more aware of your body now. How it responds when you think about the meeting. There's no knot in your stomach. No rush of adrenaline. Just a steady breath. The body recognizes safety before the mind does. That's not coincidence. That's preparation completed. This stage also invites you to see how much your identity has shifted. You're no longer defining yourself by who chooses you or how quickly something develops. Your worth isn't on the table. It's settled. When worth is settled, connection becomes exploration instead of negotiation. You might feel moments where gratitude surfaces unexpectedly. Gratitude for the versions of you that walked away when it would have been easier to stay. Gratitude for the patience you didn't know you had. Gratitude for the clarity that only came after confusion ran its course. Those moments shaped you more than you realize. This meeting doesn't come to validate your faith. Your faith was already validated by how you kept moving forward without guarantees. God didn't wait until you stopped wanting connection. He waited until wanting it no longer controlled you. That's when timing aligns. You may notice that you're not asking God to make this work. You're asking Him to keep you honest. To help you see clearly. To help you stay grounded. Those prayers are quieter, but they're deeper. God responds to alignment, not anxiety. This part of the story also reveals something important about boundaries. You're no longer afraid that boundaries will push someone away. You trust that the right person won't feel threatened by them. Boundaries don't block connection. They filter it. Filtering protects what matters. You may also sense that you're less interested in intensity and more interested in consistency. Intensity once made you feel chosen. Consistency makes you feel safe. That preference didn't come from boredom. It came from wisdom. Wisdom doesn't chase highs. It recognizes patterns. This Saturday doesn't promise instant certainty. It promises clarity over time. Clarity that builds through presence, not pressure. Through showing up, not impressing. You're no longer trying to compress the future into a single meeting. You're allowing the relationship to reveal itself through how it unfolds naturally. That patience keeps you grounded. This stage isn't asking you to lower your guard completely. It's asking you to soften it enough to let truth in. Softening without collapsing is a skill you've learned well. You may notice that your internal dialogue is kinder now. Less critical. Less demanding. You're not telling yourself what you should feel. You're listening to what you do feel. Listening builds trust. As this part of the journey continues, you may realize that you're no longer afraid of disappointment because disappointment no longer defines your story. If something doesn't align, it won't undo you. You'll adjust, not shatter. That resilience changes how you show up. This meeting doesn't carry the weight of destiny the way past connections did. It carries the lightness of possibility without obligation. That lightness allows curiosity to exist without fear. Curiosity invites honesty. You might also notice that you're not thinking in extremes. Not forever or never. Not all or nothing. You're thinking in moments. In presence.
You may
In
feel
truth
moments
as
of
it
gratitude
unfolds.
arise unexpectedly.
That mindset
Gratitude not
protects you
tied
from
to
projection.
outcome but to process. Gratitude for growth, for clarity, for the ability to feel deeply without being overwhelmed. That gratitude stabilizes you. It anchors you in present rather than pulling you toward imagined future. Whatever unfold next will come from this steadier ground. Whatever it takes the from of deeper connection, honest conservation, or peaceful redefinition, it will feel congruent. Concurrence is the feeling of this makes sense in the body, even if the mind still has questions. Trust that feeling, it's reliable. You are not being asked to predict what comes next. You are being asked to remain present for it. Presence is enough. It's more than enough. It's the condition under which meaningful things arrives without face.